Oh wait,
In the
wait, is that the David Schwimmer?
Yeah, that's the David Schwimmer.
He's in this too?
Hey guys, I'm Alain.
And I'm David, and welcome to our podcast, I Finally Watched.
Today we have a special double feature episode where I finally watched John Carter.
And I finally watched My Best Friend's Wedding. So Alain, why don't we start first with My Best Friend's Wedding to, I don't know, you would say to start with the best one, and I'll say to get it out of the way. So give me a quick rundown of the movie, of the,
Okay.
a little synopsis.
So My Best Friend's Wedding stars Julia Roberts, who plays this woman, Julianne, a food critic. And she's like 27, 28 years old. And a while back when she was dating this guy, Michael, from what I take, they had like a short relationship, and they broke it off because they kind of found out that they made better friends than lovers. And they made such good friends that they decided that when they both turned 27 or both turned 28, that if neither of them were married, then they would marry each other. So like 3 weeks before her 28th birthday, she gets a voicemail call from Michael saying, I need to speak to you urgently. So she gets all excited thinking, oh, he's 28 already and I'm turning 28. So this must be the call where he asked me to marry him. And she finds out that he's engaged to someone else, and they're going to get married, and he wants her to be there at the wedding. And so the whole kind of thing of the movie is she tries to break up the wedding and win him back.
And he's not just marrying someone else, he's marrying a 20-year-old Cameron Diaz, who's 25 at the time of filming, but
yeah, he's marrying a in her prime Cameron Diaz,
who's also who's also the daughter of a billionaire who owns, I believe, the Chicago White Sox in the movie.
Yeah, he owns the Chicago White Sox, and Michael is a sports writer himself. So yeah, he's marrying into this like very wealthy, very like perfectly business-oriented family, beautiful bride and everything like that. And yeah, so the stakes are high on this one. Well, okay, so I grew up with this movie. My mom had me watch a lot of Julia Roberts rom-coms growing up, and this was definitely like one of my favorites, because I feel like as far as 90s rom-coms go, this one kind of breaks the mold. I'm not saying it's like gigantically revolutionary, but for me, it was enjoyable. And watching it again recently, it was still enjoyable. I don't know if that's mainly nostalgic reasons, but I mean, yeah, for being, when was this? Like a 90, 96,
97.
97? So what does that make it? Like 13 years old?
I'm sorry, what?
I'm sorry, 23-year-old movie?
There you are.
Yeah. This is definitely not 2010. No, so for being like a 23-year-old movie, it's definitely, some things have aged poorly, but I still found really funny, like genuinely funny moments in it that had me laughing and also had me questioning, did my parents really let me watch this when I was like 7 years old?
So it was enjoyable. There were a lot of moments where super like awkward moments, like Cameron Diaz's terrible singing in the karaoke bar, where I was I guess as you would describe today, was very cringy. My major takeaway from the movie was just how horrible Julia Roberts and her best friend Mike O'Neill, played by, I think it's Dermot Mulroney. I get him and Dylan McDermott, like those names. I know the two. I know them different. Like I know they're different people. The names.
Yeah.
Anyway, they're just really bad people. Julia Roberts.
Oh, really? Really? You think Michael is a bad guy?
Yeah, absolutely. One, just having that close of a relationship with Julia Roberts, like while he's engaged this woman, like the way he interacts with her is a little much.
Yeah.
But then also the way he talks to Cameron Diaz in the scene where Julia Roberts tries to set Cameron Diaz up to try and get Michael to quit his job and join working with her father at the Chicago White Sox. And the way he's willing within 2 to 3 minutes to call off the wedding and basically browbeat her into apologizing, like he's just not a great person.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, you're right. Definitely the way he, yeah, like you said, I think anyone would feel uncomfortable, and you find out that Cameron Diaz is like this really, really sweet, naive debutante kind of gal. And well, at the beginning of the movie, she asked Julia Roberts, who she's known for like 8 seconds, to be her maid of honor. And then you find out towards the end of the movie that it was one of those like keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer sort of things. Part of me thought, oh, maybe Cameron Diaz's character, Kim, maybe she kind of always knew what was happening with Julia Roberts and Michael. I don't know. Some was like, oh no, she's just naive. But then you learn like, oh, maybe she was aware and she was kind of playing the other side of it too.
Well, the other thing too is so they're like 27. They said that they broke up and decided to become basically she friend zoned him 9 years ago, I think. So
Yeah.
when they were like 18, 19, they were freshmen or sophomores in college, I think. But then they talk about this night they had 6 years ago in I think Mexico.
No, it was like Tucson. It was Tucson.
Tucson.
Yeah.
Same thing, whatever. Anyway, and they talk about this night, and she's like, "Oh, that's the night we decided to. That's the night we decided that once we turn 28, if neither of us is married, we'll get married." But when she brings up that night to Michael, he's like, "Oh yeah, I think about that night every day." I'm like, "All right, well, what happened? Like,
Hmm.
were you guys friends with?" It almost alludes to that they were friends with benefits throughout the years.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
even like you were saying, his demeanor and the things that he says to her. When Cameron Diaz is trying on wedding dresses. No, no, I'm sorry, it's not wedding dresses. It's when Julia Roberts is trying on her maid of honor gown, and she's in the dressing room, and he just walks in the dressing room, and she's in her lingerie, and before he leaves the room, he's like something like, "Oh, you still look good with the little clothes you have on," or something like that. That's just not something you say to your best friend a week before your wedding,
like 2 days before the wedding.
like 2 days before the wedding. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very their relationship is very weird, and honestly would make anyone uncomfortable. And the fact
Now,
that Cameron Diaz just takes it like a champ.
now my real issue is like Julia Roberts does so many malicious, crazy things to try and get Mike back. In fact, one of them I think might have been like the commission of a crime by sending that by hacking into someone's. I don't know. It's not. I might even meet the technical definition of hacking, and then preparing an email. Like she may have committed some sort of fraud there. Um, I think the fact that in rom coms you kind of have to suspend your disbelief at certain plot devices,
Mhm.
but the fact that she does all this and within an hour of finding out that Julia Roberts tried to sabotage his wedding and get him fired from his job, or not necessarily get him fired from his job, but do something that could have jeopardized his job, he forgives her very, very quickly. And then Cameron Diaz, who has known her for 3 days, also forgives her very, very quickly.
Yeah, I did find that very weird. Like you said, it is a rom-com, so you just have to like, take it as it is. But at the end of the movie, and we'll just talk about the end here, so spoilers. At the end of the movie, Julia Roberts and Michael kiss under a gazebo, and this is right after Julia tells him that she's loved him. She's always loved him. And she wants him to choose her to wed instead of Cameron Diaz. And then, of course, Cameron Diaz walks in on the middle of the kiss and runs away, and he chases her, and then Julia Roberts chases him, and the foot chase turns into a car chase. And basically, at the train station, they lose Cameron Diaz. And I took it that when Julia goes to find Cameron Diaz to kind of try to patch things up and make up for everything, that was kind of her redemption, because she finds her in like the bathroom of a stadium, and gets her back in time for the wedding. And I guess the writers of the movie want us to think, okay, that was enough to like take back every single crime and wrongdoing that she did from the beginning of the movie.
I did like in that scene all the women listening in, and like it was an episode of Oprah being like,
Mm-hmm.
and then like at the end, like, oh yeah, you guys should hug. Oh, everything's better now. It was fun.
Well, I think watching this movie again, after years and years and years, there were very specific parts of the movie that I thought, oh my God, that's like genius. Like, oh, it's so funny. Like, and it's very small, insignificant parts. Like the fact that she steals a bread truck, and towards the end of the third act, or I guess I should say the beginning of the third act, there's now a random car chase scene in the middle of this rom-com where she's talking to Michael, and the kids are like sucking up helium and singing. I'm like, it's so weird, but it's so funny that I'm like, there's just these moments that I just really love in this movie.
I'd say my favorite part of the movie was Rupert Everett, who plays George, her best friend who's gay, who for part of the movie pretends to be her fiance.
Mm-hmm.
Like every scene he's in is like basically everything he says is funny in the entire movie.
He was definitely the shining star of the movie.
Yeah, so I liked him. I mean, overall,
were you going to say about the singing part in the restaurant? Say a little prayer.
My wife, before we watched it, she had seen it. She was like, "I like one part of this movie, and you need to guess what part it was." And then as that part started, she's like, "This is it."
Yeah, no, it's so funny, and I think a lot of the beats in the movie, like the very beginning, the musical number to open up the movie,
which just kept going. I thought it was going to be a minute, and then it's just, oh wow, it's this
well,
whole song.
You forget in the 90s you have to have like 5 minutes of opening credits to every movie. So
that's true.
Yeah, and then even the Helium Kids singing is like a musical beat that starts the third act, and then at the very end where the song comes in on the radio of the car was the same song, and then they dance at the end, which was the same song that they sung at the restaurant.
Oh yeah, Julia Roberts also gives her song that she has with Mike. She's like, here, you guys can have this song as your song, because Mike and Cameron Diaz didn't have a song together. So basically, this song that we've probably boned to, you guys can have your first dance with it. I'll loan it to you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
very magnanimous.
There's definitely some writing flaws in this movie that make it be like, oh, why would you ever forgive her? Why would you ever condone this relationship with your husband, your about to be husband? And then, but I think that was like, okay, she's come full circle. She learned her lesson, and she's going to give up like the one last romantic thing she had with Michael to their relationship. And that's like her moment of finally letting go. So I'll have to ask you, did you like this movie? How much did you like this movie? And would you ever watch this movie again?
I'll start with the easiest answer. I will not ever watch this movie again.
Oh.
I enjoyed it. I had a lot of problems with it, obviously, plot-wise, but it's an enjoyable romantic comedy, and a lot of those things that I have a problem with plot-wise are just things that are in all, romantic comedies don't necessarily have to make logical story sense for them to be entertaining. A will say that if I'm gonna watch a Julia Roberts movie, I'd probably go Notting Hill or Runaway Bride. I think those are like my go-to ones that I enjoyed growing up. So maybe rewatch those at some point. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad I watched it, but I won't revisit it.
Understandable.
So I guess at this point would be a good time to get to John Carter if you're ready to talk about that.
Yeah. Okay.
So
um.
I'll just quick synopsis. John Carter is a cavalryman that fought in the Civil War for the South. He is trying to find gold in the West in, I want to say, Navajo tribe land.
Mhm.
And he's escaping a pack of Native Americans that are chasing him and these other U.S. soldiers that are trying to tame the territory, in their words. And he goes into a cave and is somehow transported to Mars. Just that old gem of a story. And in this movie, Mars is called Barsoom, and because he is used to the gravitational, I should have just said gravity, because he's used to the gravity of Earth, he has he's stronger in Mars. He can punch harder. He can jump with very little effort. He's kind of superhuman compared to the people of Mars. So he runs into a bunch of different tribes in Mars that are kind of warring, and he meets a princess. And we're just going to talk about the entire plot here, so spoil. Go watch it if you want. And they fall in love, and he also has to defeat a bad guy that is backed by these super powerful wizard type guys that are called Therns. And so it's John Carter conquering Mars. I wouldn't say
Yeah.
exactly conquering, but that's the basic plot. Saving the planet, marrying the woman, just random epic stuff. So,
Yeah.
Alain,
Mhm.
what were your thoughts?
Well, I heard this movie lost the studio a lot of money, and
Unimportant,
it
but go on.
yeah, I didn't hear very positive things about the movie other than from you. So going into it, I basically had like dirt expectations. I was like, okay, this is gonna be bad. I'm prepared. When I told my girlfriend, oh, we're gonna watch John Carter, and she's like, oh, what's that? And I pull it up on Netflix, and she goes, oh. So I'm like, yeah, pretty much my sentiment exactly. Here's what I want to get out first of all. I have no problem with Disney epics. I love a lot of Disney live action epics. Like I loved Pirates of the Caribbean. I loved National Treasure. And obviously those two films, National Treasure more, has their own flaws and everything. But there was something that I just couldn't get over with John Carter. And I think what it was is the movie is like 2 hours and 15 minutes long, is that it just tried to stuff so much in those 2 hours and 15 minutes that was not just confusing to the plot, but I felt for an epic Western space story kind of dragged a lot of the time.
What confused you? I'm here to help.
Uh-huh. See, it's not so much like confusing as in like, because it's kind of like you explained the plot. It's just about this guy back in the Civil War who gets transported to Mars. So he just has to kind of deal with the aliens and the social political nuances that are happening there, and the fact that because of the gravitational pull being so different, he's basically Superman. Um, and there were a few things that I actually did enjoy about the movie. Like I thought I'm trying to find good things to say about this movie. Um,
Well, you could say
it
anything about the movie. Just tell the people how you feel.
My main takeaway from the movie is that it was actually a lot funnier than what I thought was what I was going into. I thought some of the comic beats were actually really, really good. Like when he's at the bar in the beginning, and he's like, "Oh, you want to fight?" And he gets punched out immediately, and then he ends up in front of the rest of the cavalrymen, and he tries to escape, and all his escaping attempts are like stopped short, until he's thrown in jail, and then he's punched out again. And the comic beats on that were actually pretty funny. There were times, I thought it dragged as far as the story goes, as far as the relationship with the princess goes. There's one point where he gets exiled from this alien camp, and
The Tharks.
and he has to he escapes with the daughter of the head Thark,
Sola, yes.
and they have to go down this river
The river Is.
because they get to the end of the river Is, and they get to like this huge structure. They get inside, and there's like this solar system map, and that's where he kind of figures out, oh, he's not on Earth anymore, he's on Mars. But I feel like that's kind of all they figure out. Like that, there's whole plot points that the ending of the plot points are just answers that the audience already knows, which just made the movie unnecessarily long.
When this first came out, really loved this movie. It was my wife and I, and one of the few people in the theaters, obviously, from how much money it lost. And we just really liked it. We're like, I wonder why this is not doing well. And then that actually led me to read all the books. And one takeaway from this is based on the first book, obviously. One takeaway is that they did really kind of change and kind of complicate the story a little bit. The Therns, that are these kind of all magical wizards that sort of are trying to control Barsoom, Mars, and how it's going to be run and keep their power. They are not really in that first book. They're in the second book, but it's like kind of completely different. I wanted to try and read a synopsis of the book because I don't remember it that well, but I still like just really enjoyed. Yeah, the touches of comedy. I thought the action was really good, and I also just kind of enjoyed the world building story that it was. It's kind of this. It was, it's obviously it was a novel that was written in like 1910. But it was like this fresh thing that wasn't Star Wars or Marvel or DC. It was this like whole new world that they could kind of build to be what they wanted. And so I just really enjoyed it. I found it funny. The thing I liked the most about it is, so the story that takes place on Mars and starts with John Carter is actually kind of a flashback of sorts, read by his nephew. John Carter in the beginning, is his nephew is told that John Carter's died. And so his nephew comes to his estate. John Carter is extremely wealthy, comes to his estate and said, hey, your uncle wanted you to be the executor of his will, and only you are allowed to read this journal. And then John Carter in the journal is like, you've always believed my stories. I need you to believe this one. And then that sets up the entire part of Mars. And then at the end of Mars, these magical Therns, I feel like I'm reading like a Dungeons and Dragons synopsis, but these Therns send John Carter back to Earth so that they can once again control Mars, because John Carter he's super strong and able to, he's somewhat of a match for them. And what I really enjoyed is the last 10 minutes of the movie, where the nephew has then just read this story and he's told, like, you are the only one that can get in my tomb. He goes to the tomb, figures out the code to get in, and then he goes in, and one of the Therns, because these Therns can go from world to world, is standing behind the nephew and is going to kill John Carter. but then John Carter is actually alive and he kills the Thurn. And this whole story was a trap so that he could get what the Thurns use to travel from world to world, so he could get back to his wife,
Right.
Deja Thoris. And that part to me was just, I thought, so cool, the way they set that up. And I do think in rewatching it, it's not as great as I remembered it, but it was still really good. And I wish it had done well enough, because I think this story could have expanded more. There's obviously more books, but I think there was much more territory they could go with. The books actually deal a lot with the fact that Mars is dying, and I don't know if this would have been too political for 2012, but they touch on this in the movie. It's kind of got a like a climate change type narrative as far as Mars is dying, they're really out of water, and how they're ruining the planet. And the Thurns go into how this happens planet after planet, and it's going to happen. They tell John Carter it's going to happen to Earth too, and that they dealt much more with that in the book, and I think that story might have been more interesting. I get what they're trying to do with the whole magical aspect of it, and I still like the movie a lot, but I can see they do try and pack a whole bunch into the movie, so I do agree with that.
Well, what's interesting is that because, I wonder, because of people who read the book, did not enough people like the book? Because I feel like when a franchise is being made of something popular, before the reviews are even in, wouldn't those people go to see it? And it makes me wonder of two things. One, because it's such an old book, that maybe they did not have enough fans of it to support this kind of new franchise. And also, two, there isn't really any big named actors as main characters to like really drive that box office. Like Pirates of the Caribbean had Johnny Depp and Orlando Bloom. National Treasure had
Parts of the what?
Caribbean.
Continue. Whatever.
National Treasure had Nicolas Cage and Jon Voight. And it just makes me think that maybe this was badly cast, because for someone like John Carter, the character, I didn't think the actor, what's his name? Taylor Kitsch? Yeah.
Kitsch?
I didn't think he was very charming or charismatic. He kind of had this like Batman, Christian Bale voice the entire time. And his like, I don't know, he didn't have this like enigmatic pull to him as a character.
Well, it's interesting at that time. So he had just come off of Friday Night Lights, the television show, where he plays Tim Riggins. I doubt you've watched Friday Night Lights, the movie or the TV show.
Nope.
But after that, there was a point where he was gonna be a huge actor. He was in this, which was, Disney didn't advertise it very much, but I mean, the budget's like $250 million or something crazy. It's maybe even higher. I don't remember. So they put a lot of money behind a movie where he's the main character. And at the same time, he was in Battleship, which, spoiler alert, I liked Battleship. So
of course you did.
So he did John Carter and Battleship and Savages all in the same year. And I liked all three.
Of course you did.
Battleship is like, I think, a better version of like the Transformer movies, to be honest with you. I don't think
Wow, you set the bar. Yeah, you set the bar real high with that one.
But the thing is, the Transformer movies made a shit ton of money. It's like, well, obviously they're like popcorn movies that aren't very intellectually challenging, but they're still entertaining movies. I enjoy entertaining movies and intellectually challenging movies. I really love
but see, that's the thing though, is that I enjoy entertaining movies too, but there's some that are just bad.
Yeah, like My Best Friend's Wedding. I get it. Anyway, I was making a point. At this time, they were trying to make like there's this conspiracy. He was kind of on an uptick, but John Carter, Battleship, I guess Savages too, didn't do great.
I've never even heard of Savages.
Savages is actually, I don't know. You might like it. Whatever. It stars him and then Aaron Taylor Johnson from Kick-Ass and
Yeah,
Blake Lively.
yeah, okay.
And basically him and Aaron Taylor Johnson are these kind of badass guys that I think they rob people. Anyway, they face off against the Mexican drug cartel who kidnaps Blake Lively. They both like share her as a girlfriend. It's directed by Oliver Stone. I forgot that part. It's an entertaining, interesting movie. I wouldn't say great. But anyway, my overall point is I think at this time they thought this guy was going to be huge. And he kind of had two major tentpole blockbuster movies that he was the face of, and neither did that great. And so it didn't work out. I think since then he's actually kind of done some smaller, pretty great stuff. He's the he plays David Koresh in Waco, the miniseries that I think is on Netflix now, and I've heard that's great. He was in American Assassin, which is a really kind of good movie that I
I see
enjoyed.
it. Yeah, I see that he's, also in like True Detective and
Well, that's the season that everyone hates.
oh.
But whatever. The most famous
No,
person.
please keep proving my point. Go ahead.
Well, no,
He was in X-Men Origins. That did really well. Everyone absolutely loved that.
So anyway, I actually really like him as an actor. I think he kind of got unlucky with these two movies. John Carter isn't considered bad because of him. Like the story, I can agree, is a little bit muddled, and it's packing so much
a
information.
little bit muddled.
A little bit.
A little bit. I would say it's a lot muddled. I'd say that there's actually a good story in John Carter, but it's completely surrounded with crap, and it suffocates what actually could have been good. It could have been better. It could have been shorter. And in terms, it could have been more tolerable. But it wasn't. So here we are.
Yeah, no, I agree. It obviously could have been better. Julia Roberts could have been a better person in My Best Friend's Wedding, but she wasn't.
But see, that was the story. At least see, when I told you to watch this movie, it was like an hour and a half long. You made me watch a 135-minute movie.
2 hours, 12 minutes.
It was so convoluted, especially at the end. Not at the very end where, what was it, his nephew that opened his casket, which was a trap for the Thurns, but where it was like the final battle between him and the guy that she was going to marry, who I have no idea how to say anyone's name in the movie besides John Carter.
You mean Dotar Sojat?
Was that
That was John Carter's warrior name.
Okay.
One thing that they do in the book, so the book obviously written in like the early 1900s, it's kind of, they're shorter, but such a difficult read because we just don't talk like that anymore. And so it's kind of dense because of that. But it always made me laugh as like an inside joke with no one but me, because no one went back and read these books. But they always referred to, so the princess that he marries is Deja Thoris. And they always, and whenever they spoke about her, because it's written from John Carter's point of view, he always calls her the incomparable Deja Thoris. And so whenever like her name is mentioned, I always am like the incomparable Deja Thoris. But I mean, Tars Tarkas, Tal Hajus, Mata Shang, played by Mark Strong. I mean, Mark Strong's a pretty big actor.
Mark Strong is a big actor, and the guy who plays Tars Tarkas is Willem Dafoe, who is another big actor. And
it's just his voice.
His voice work is fine. I saw in the credits that Jon Favreau is in there playing one of the Tarks, and I was trying to kind of find which one, but they all look the same, so I don't know. It's at the very beginning of the movie. He walks into this bar, and there's like the bartender or shop. I guess back then the bar was the shopkeep, whatever. And he wanted items, and the guy behind the bar to sell him the items looked a lot like Jon Favreau. And so I turned to my girlfriend. I was like, "Oh, I didn't know Jon Favreau was in this movie," as a joke. And then when I went to look up the cast and saw that he was actually a voice of one of the aliens, I was like, "Oh, that's really funny." I had no idea.
Well, that was Donna's father from that '70s show. Was the barkeep.
Her actual father? No, you mean the father in the show.
Donna is not a real person from that '70s show. Laura Prepon is a real person.
That
Donna
is
is a
not her
kid.
dad.
It is her dad in the movie. Oh wait,
In the
wait, is that the David Schwimmer?
Yeah, that's the David Schwimmer.
He's in this too?
I could not find him either. So
Well,
they
that's because
had
he's a young Thark warrior. Like, you're not going to see them.
Was he a baby? Did he do the crying of all the little like pupa babies that hatched?
Let's wrap this up. Overall,
Uh-huh.
what did you think of the movie? Not being a hater, but just
Okay.
your actual thoughts.
Okay.
And will you watch it again?
So my honest opinion, without being too down on this movie, is that it did have some actually genuine funny moments. And I believe that there is a good movie in there if they stopped and took out a lot of the repetitiveness and like the slow story arcs and worked more on John Carter and the princess's relationship and made that more. I felt like that was kind of ingenuine. They didn't give them a lot of like great moments to like build that romance up. And I felt like, oh, there's a lot of places in the movie where you could have taken this out or you could have cut this shorter and you could have put in more places to build that romance. I can say that I have no desire to ever watch John Carter beyond this point. I'm sorry.
I could have guessed that you were never going to watch this again. I don't think I'll watch it again anytime soon just because the story has the ability to continue. Obviously, because it did so poorly, it won't. And so it's such just a one-off story that it kind of disappoints me that we couldn't get more of it. So yeah, I mean, I'll eventually, I'll check in from time to time on John Carter of Mars. That's the other thing too. It's just the marketing behind this was so poor that like, yeah, you may say it's not that great of a movie. I think people feel that way about Lone Ranger too. I don't think that did as poorly. So with the name Disney behind something and a marketing campaign, like something's not going to do that poorly.
Well, I don't even think Lone Ranger has an excuse. I mean, it had Johnny Depp behind it. It had Armie Hammer behind it. So, that was just probably up for bad writing and some inappropriate ethnic casting. So
I liked Lone Ranger. So
of course you did. Of course you did. All right, guys. Well, that's the episode. I'm Alain, and I like good movies.
I'm David, and I'm not a pretentious ass, and I like a lot of movies.
All right. See you guys next time.
Later.